Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to introduce a man I have a huge respect for in the person of Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, SANCON, the former governor, Lagos State. Please put your hands together. Make welcome a father in the land.
Thank you. Good morning. Your Excellency, the very hardworking governor of Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, Your Excellencies, Your Royal Majesties, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the government and the fiscal planning team in Lagos State, for example, for convening this meeting. I think it's a very important meeting. And I am thankful that I am able to participate, but more importantly, that I have the opportunity to speak after the Honorable Commissioner has spoken, and after the representative of the Honorable Minister has spoken, and after Shijibomi has spoken, and you will see common threads that resonate in what they have to say: sustainability, investment, development, and implementation. So the question I asked when I got the invitation to speak is this: why should we be talking when we all know what needs doing? And I think all those who have spoken before me clearly point the way forward. There is a lot that needs to be done. But of course, as to be expected, one of the most respected town planners that I know in Nigeria, Mr. Tony Aide, he was the emissary of the organizers to me. And here we are. He knows how to twist my hand and make a compelling case. And he argued, yes, there's a lot to talk about, sir. And even if all we do while we talk is to remind ourselves of what remains to be done. And when he said that, I said, okay, I will come, just to remind each other about what remains to be done. And so that's why I said those who spoke before me have already walked the path I will tread, which is to remind ourselves what needs to be done. But just before I go in there, what really is a megacity? How many people in this meeting know what a megacity is? And I ask this question not in any derisory manner, but in reality of the fact back then that people used to ask me, Governor, where is the megacity? So for not a few, it was a sacred place, a special place, almost like a heavenly place. And I recall that it was my responsibility to continue to enlighten that it is not a destination, it is a status. A status of the number of people within a spatial environment designated as cities. And it was cities that had populations of 10 million and above. So once you become mega, your headache really becomes mega. Two days ago, we were watching the European football series, and I was asking somebody, when last he saw Liechtenstein, it's a small principality nation, play football last. Liechtenstein has a population of about 40,000 people. That's the entire country's population. They don't have a known army. I think they are situated somewhere between Switzerland and one other country. So those people provide their security and their defense. But they're one of the richest nations in the world. So I'm sure Governor Sanwo-Olu will be happy if he had only 40,000 people to provide for. More than enough water, more than enough houses, more than enough roads. But unfortunately, his burden is measured in millions. Mega burden. There is a country called Iceland. I think Nigeria played them in one of the knockout stages of the Russian World Cup. They had quite a following in that World Cup. And somebody said, look, who did they leave at home? Because it seems the whole country has come to the World Cup. The entire population of the country is under 400,000 people. And many of them have come to support at the World Cup. But why is this diversion necessary? It is to understand the context of this meeting, how to organize in a mega city, and the kind of mega materials that will be needed. In other city-states, for example, maybe in those kind of cities I've spoken about, maybe it's just one rail line that you will require. Lagos has a concept and a master plan for 7, and we are at 2. So, in that mega arrangement, what is the role of the town planner? Who is the town planner? And I think that for me, and I've argued, the most important member, in my view, of the cabinet of a mega city like Lagos, the most important member, first and foremost, is the town planner. Because it is his responsibility to envision how the state, the environment will evolve. So you will see Dr. Olumide when he was here, he was talking about roads, he was talking about water, he was talking about... He hasn't limited himself to planning approval. But, big but, and this is the heart of the matter. One of my mentees and I were having a conversation, and we took the view that regrettably, very regrettably, and I say this with respect, but I think it's factual, and I will make the case, the town planner has not been as vocal as it should be, especially in this environment. The town planner has not taken the driver's seat. And I think that compared to other professionals, the town planner has been somewhat diffident. So on radio and TV, how many times do you hear accountants, taxmen, tax practitioners, lawyers like me, architects like architect Ani Baba, and economists like Ben come and talk to us? How many times do you see town planners? Just think about it. But they should be the ones we see every day, too frequently, in fact. So, and in my view, if the town planner steps forward and begins to take us on that journey of visioning, on that journey to prosperity, some of the problems we agonize about today will be solved much quicker because we will understand why and what needs to be done. So that is the first point I wish to make, and that if the role of the town planner determines whether or not prosperity matures in a land or poverty reigns, because nature has been kind enough to us, if not kinder than most. We have almost everything. The land resource, the oceans, the creeks, the landforms, everything is here. But the real question is, how have we used those resources? And that is the remit of the town planner. I envision the role of town planner as one who decides how these assets, natures, are used for the optimum benefit and the common prosperity of the environment. The town planner should, in my view, lead us in determining what parts of the land provides roads, schools, markets, places of worship, health facilities, recreation facilities, waste and water treatments, before deciding what is left for building dwelling houses. If this is done, I think that we would avoid the current situation where people first take land for dwelling, then there is no land to build the roads to get to their houses. I know of one estate that was parceled out many years ago, but nobody has been able to live there. Because whilst they were parceling out the land, they didn't sit down to say, how do we get in? So everybody took their own parcels of land, but there was no way to get in, and there was no way to get out. I think the Attorney General knows that estate. Is that prosperity or poverty? So it's an asset without value. I know of one estate here in Lagos, prime real estate. There is only one road in and one road out. In my view, the value of that estate is diminishing by the day. And it is ultra-prime real estate. But unfortunately, planning did not conceptualize choice of ingress and egress. So in that real estate, if somebody there gives you an appointment that is coming to see you, a journey that should take 5 minutes, less than 2 kilometers drive, they can't keep appointments beneath 40 minutes. Your guess is as good as mine where I'm talking about. But I believe the governor is also aware, and I'm sure behind is doing something. But it shows the critical role of all of the moving parts and the role of the town planner. It should therefore not surprise us that in some other jurisdictions, we have straight roads, grid network of roads, and mostly in our jurisdictions, when you look out from the plane, when you are about to land or take it, you see our roads winding because we first grab the land before we find the way to get there. And these are some of the reasons why I argue that the town planner has not been as vocal and as frontal as they can be. I make the point that, therefore, we should remind ourselves that it is the town planner who will determine how we get water supply, how we get power supply, and other utilities, and where they will be located. It is the planner's job to use population numbers in the possession of the economic planner. That's Ministry of Budget. I think that's where Mr. Okpe George currently serves. They must sit together every weekend. What are the numbers like? How many people need water? What do you have? How many people don't have a job? And how do we then make this more efficient and easy for them? How much water do they need? And it is all of these that are used to develop a development plan. when the town planner has envisioned where all of this will be, then the economic planner will begin to put numbers to them. As I speak, a question to ponder is how many new cemeteries, and I don't intend to be morbid, but we're all going to die. And I always say those who don't want to die better return back to where they came from. But everybody who came here is going, including me and you. So how many new cemeteries have we built post-independence? And go and look at the post-independent ones that we inherited. Now the walkways are burial grounds. These are the absences of the town planner, regrettably. But they are reminders. As I said, we are coming to remind ourselves what needs to be done. Because, as I say, death is certain after life. If the town planner decides on these critical development plans, including the rail, as Lagos State has commendably done, it is the responsibility of the economic planner to put numbers to them. This will form the basis of budgets from year to year that the finance team and the treasury department have to raise money for. Since there is a persuasive view that this conversation can be useful if it reminds us of the things we already know, let me now pivot to a few reminders. And the first reminder that I pivot to is that we passed what I think was then a far-sighted and visionary planning law in 2014. It was on the back of a conference such as this, and we got all of the planners in Lagos and to come and lead us into a law that will work. It was a law unlike any other in that space at the time in this country and in these parts. And part of the objective was to ensure that buildings were constructed in conformity with the approved plans and also with the specifications in those approved plans. And we created, for the first time, a building control agency to serve as a check and a balance to the power to approve, which was in one place, and the power to control, which was in another place. We separated them. The long-term objective of this was that once buildings were started, whether during construction or after construction, they will stay up and not collapse. But sadly, the stigma of non-compliance still remains with us. I think it was just yesterday or 2 days ago in Orile that the building came down. And even in the prime areas of our great state, non-compliance has led to structures coming down and lives lost. Back then, I remember that one major religious building collapsed in the twilight of my administration. We set up a coroner's inquest, and I believe that findings were made. But the question to ask from the planning department is what happened to the report of the coroner. Let me remind us also that in embracing our mega city status, Lagos State back then developed 9 model city plans. And I think that they are listed somewhere, I think around page 45 of the brochure for this conference. And the point I just want to make as a reminder is that those plans may now require some updating, but the implementation of those plans must not be forsaken. Otherwise, we gather here in vain if we can't implement. And I'm happy that the Honorable Commissioner himself spoke about implementation. and all those who spoke after him. Let me remind us also that the Adinyo Waterworks Phase 2 needs to be urgently concluded, and that new ones should be planned and implemented to ensure that Lagos is a functional mega city. A city-state without water leaves a lot to be done. And we must not forget to complete the Ekpe waste collection and recycling plants and finish the work at Olusosun in order to retain our ability to manage our waste. I must here acknowledge the current administration's efforts in completing about 17 different housing estates, but urge that new ones must be planned, commenced, and constructed. I think that part of the transport planning efforts must include now, this is me just thinking, why is it that we cannot have many government offices beyond the local governments now in our suburbs? Why should everybody come to Alausa? And if we have like these satellite offices, technology now allows us to link them together, and they're still functioning in a most efficient way. I think this will also reduce the pressure on transport services and infrastructure and commuting. This is a matter for the planner to think about. I must, of course, commend the administration for advancing the work on the blue and the red line, and also initiating work now, I hear from the governor's recent trip to China, that about plans to begin to finance the construction of the Green Line. And all of this deserve commendation. But while these works go on, I want to say that we cannot abdicate our state's far-reaching work on the bus rapid transit system, which was then the first in Africa. So that was a model from South America, Brazil, Colombia, and all of that. But it was the first time a BRT system was designed and built and operated in Africa. And I argue here, as part of a reminder, that what we need to do is to reclaim the BRT from the tyranny of tricycles, minibuses called Korokwe, while expanding our waterways capacity in order to achieve our intermodal transport objectives. Yes, there may be people who own tricycles in this hall. There may be people who operate Korokwe in this hall, and they will not like that part of my speech. At the time, we tried to restrict the movement of motorcycles in Lagos State. I noticed some hesitancy in the cabinet meeting when we were discussing the bill that was supposed to go to the House. So I stopped the meeting and I called my chief of staff and asked him, why are our colleagues not embracing this? He said, "Oga, they run motorcycles. They finance them, some of their family." I said, okay. Well, whatever it takes here, we will pass this law. We did, and thankfully, we listed X number of routes for the restriction to be implemented. The House of Assembly expanded the number of routes in a very, very life-saving and courageous piece of legislative representation. And the same thing happened when we were going to pass the law to reduce rent collection from multiple years to 1 year. I don't think any cabinet member even supported that law. But the power of the governor sometimes can be used for being a good bully. So, let me ask Governor Sanwo-Olu to use his power to be a good bully, because we must reclaim the BRT. We spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and we gained a lot of fame. We can't put that right under this. And I think, and let me be clear, for me, the proliferation of motorcycles, tricycles, and those minibuses on Lagos roads are in clear conflict. They're in conflict with the many commitments we have made on climate change because of their high greenhouse gas emissions. And our partners, those we signed these agreements with across the world, must be watching us with some concern. Are these people really serious? I have no objection if the motorcycles can be turned to CNG, if they can be turned, the Korokwe can be turned to, and the federal government is proposing now very massive fiscal reforms in terms of tax holidays, tax remissions in clean energy sector of our environment. But I think something needs to be done. That's another reminder. Of course, let me quickly go and try to round up now by pointing out that our world today is rewarding talent in an unprecedented way. Talent is being rewarded in an unprecedented way. So back in the time, we were forbidden for playing football or for trying to be musicians or for trying to be thespians. We had to go and study accounting, but the world has changed. And you can go and ask Mbakwe's parents or Cristiano Ronaldo's family just what playing football now does, or our young international artists. So the world has changed, and the town planner must be conscious of this in how we now use our land resources to grow those opportunities. Because what used to be our own hobbies are now the professions of young people. This is their occupation. Playing football, sports, basketball, all of those. Singing, performing arts. And therefore, we must provide the environment that enables that to thrive so that we can confront youth unemployment on an expansive scale. I believe that the sports and entertainment field provides the answer in a large scale to the problem of youth unemployment. And I say that the answer is hiding in plain sight. It's staring at us, but we're not seeing it. So I want to remind us here that we should look at it. So the town planner, in my view, must now be thinking of where our new stadia will be, where our concert arenas will be, new film studios, and performance centers. So just imagine that we didn't have this. Where would we be hosting this? And as the country starts to expand our interstate roads and rail network, I think the planner must begin to envision the development of new housing estates and settlements within a few kilometers of each rail station and major federal highway interchanges. When the Lagos-Ibadan rails project started, as Minister of Housing, I wrote to all the governors across that route to tell their town planners to look for land of 20, 40, 30 hectares that were contiguous to the rail stations and begin to develop new town settlements to them. That advice then is still relevant today. And so that once people find residence contiguous to 2 kilometers walk to a train station, they will live there. And this is the way I think we must begin to think. Of course, in planning these estates now, we must include all of these talent supporting infrastructure, the mini stadia, the town halls, the concerts, the recreational services, and all of that. These are ingredient parts of state development plans that will then be executed in phases from administration to administration. Whilst we are still on that subject, some cities have carved a niche for themselves in MICE tourism. MICE is the acronym for meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions. So, how many MICE events are we hosting here? How many people are coming from other parts of the world to come and host conferences here? We are all too quick to go to Rwanda, to go to Kenya, to go to South Africa. But why can't they be quick to come here? It just needs us to change the game. And this is the role, in my view, also of the planner. For me, people say, well, there is no money. But I always say, where is the plan? We should focus more on planning extensively, planning imaginatively, planning ambitiously. Because if there is a good plan, money will follow the plan. And I think that if there is any state that has demonstrated as a subnational its creditworthiness with the financial sector and has raised successful bonds against the odds, it is Lagos State. So Lagos State should plan, and Lagos State can raise the funding for any development plan it has conceived. And I think the time has now come, in my view, for Lagos State to consider and aggressively pursue single project bonds. So instead of just a state bond, one critical bridge, one critical highway, a bond for it. And I think that we will be pleasantly excited at what it can bring for us. Of course, on this part of tourism development and mines and all of that, is to point out that between Badagry and Ekpe, we have a peninsula bordered by the lagoon and the Atlantic. And if you have ever been to Cancun in Mexico or Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, it is not different. It's the same landform. But as I said, how have the town planners designed the evolution? And now that the federal government has committed to building the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, I would like to know from the Lagos town planners what they envision for this corridor. That is our corridor of prosperity, if we position ourselves now. For me, it will be a prolific tourist area facing the Atlantic and backing the peninsula, depending on where you face, and backing the lagoon, rather. And this can be a very, very great employment area where we optimize the benefits of those islands, Ilashe, Inogbe, Ilado, Iru, to Ekpe. So what is different between all the islands in Greece that we go on resort and in Naples? It's the same land. Ours is even better. Weather is stable all year round. So these are the reminders that I think that I like to share. And just to remind us that in about 10 years ago, or 12 years now, investment of about $20 billion moved from one state and came into this state. Just to put us on guard that the reverse can also happen. And it is how we position ourselves. There is no guarantee that our leadership role is reserved. We must continue to earn it. We must continue to reinforce it. We must continue to protect it by being far-sighted and being dedicated. And nobody can lead this conversation than where I started, our town planners. So, in closing, at this our meeting of reminders, I call it a meeting of reminders because that's what town planner and they said we should come and talk about, remind ourselves. So I want to remind us that there were previous commitments made in this state to improve the process of the issuance of development and building approvals. Is that true? Now, a process that takes 2 years to respond to an investor's request for planning approval is sending that investor away. So as I said, the way one state lost an investment and came here, we will lose investors if we don't deal with this. Because especially in a period of price volatility, if the investor cannot get his approval within a number of weeks and his price changes, once bitten, twice shy. So we must remind ourselves. We must remind ourselves also that payment for processing requests for building approvals must be reasonable administrative costs. Reasonable administrative costs. I think that resonates. And if it does, well, you better let the governor hear with a loud applause. But the reason I say that is not to deprive the state of any revenues. It is, in fact, to multiply the state's revenues. And let me tell you why. Payments for planning approval must not be seen and cannot be revenue. They are not sustainable. They are not sustainable as revenue. It's a one-off. But the service that government offers to those who are able to build must not leave a hole in the pocket of government. That's why I say it must be reasonable administrative costs to cover the provision of the service. The real revenue comes from prompt approval and then the construction of the asset itself. Because that is where your land use charge will begin to come from because of the value added to the land. And that is sustainable, is yearly. They can't take the building away again. So we must see this, and those who are working for the governor must see this. So the revenues will also come. If the buildings are rented, there is capital gains and all of those things. That's part of the revenue. If the buildings are used for commercial purposes and all of that, the turnover in VAT that comes from those value-added taxes is the real sustainable revenue that the state can project its future on, as well as the personal income taxes that will come from those who are employed where those buildings are used for commercial development and commercial operations. And what I don't see in terms of revenue, I'm sure people who are tax experts will see more than that. But certainly, let us be clear. Payment approval as revenue is tunnel vision. It's no vision at all. And of course, if we must maximize the possibilities of these potential revenues, apart from moderating costs, we must now streamline the number of agencies that an applicant must go through But hey, this is not new. We're just reminding ourselves. This is a meeting of reminders. Because this is deliberate, strategic ease of doing business initiative. Reduce the number of agencies, compress them, and use technology. The more complex the process, the more expensive it becomes, and the cost then makes it less attractive to business, and they might go somewhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the reminders I can think of within the context of the time and on the theme of the summit. I do hope that they help to set the stage for other eminent contributors who will not only stimulate our collective memories about those things I have forgotten, but they will also inspire us about the emerging possibilities in the profession of town planning. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations, and I thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with a standing ovation, may we please appreciate. Thank you, sir.